Malta and I'm fashion historian. Welcome to my YouTube video. Yay! Today's topic, I'm gonna do a costume review of 2006 Marie Antoinette. That is one of my favorite films. I really love it. I think the costumes are so amazing and so pretty. And you can always do a costume review even though the costumes are superb. You don't always have to be like, oh my gosh, this is why I hate this. And that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna explain away the costumes. And if this is kind of related to my last video, which was about fashion journey of Marie Antoinette. So if you haven't seen that one, please go and check that one out first, because I'm gonna be referencing on that video as well in this one. Because obviously both of these are going to be about Marie Antoinette and what she wore. Obviously this one is about the film version, but there's a lot of things that go pretty well together. So, let's get started. What to do for pleasure? The 2006 Marie Antoinette film opens with the picture of Marie Antoinette laying on a sofa, I think, surrounded by cakes, and she's wearing this white dress and there's a maid, and she has feathers in her hair, and that scene I think represents very well how we see Marie Antoinette. Like, that's the stereotype that we all know about her. It's referencing to the phrase, "let them eat cake," which we all know is wrong. That's not something that she ever said. And the phrase is actually much more older, what she is, and yeah, that's just something that definitely isn't true. And I think that the first scene is showing us how we think Marie Antoinette really, what we see, and this movie is about changing our view of her. In a way, it's kind of, we're seeing her like that, but kind of not like that, because we can now relate to it, or at least teenage girls can relate to her, which we're the main audience of this film. I don't really have anything to say about exactly the costume that she wears. It's pretty. There's pink tulle, which isn't historically accurate, but we don't mind it. It doesn't have to be historically accurate, because it is showing us how we perceive Marie Antoinette. It's not about how she actually was. So Marie Antoinette, the film, has over 60 costumes just that Marie Antoinette wears. So obviously I'm not gonna go through all of them, because otherwise this video would be hours and hours of long. So the next costume that I want to talk about is the one that she arrives to border of France, and she has her little pup with her little dog, and she's wearing this cream colored outfit which is decorated with pom-poms, and I think that one is really pretty. I think the cream color is representing her innocence and how she doesn't really know much. In history, Marie Antoinette was wearing grand habit de gore when traveling, so French court gown basically. And obviously this isn't exactly the French court gown, but it still does show us her in a formal outfit when traveling. Obviously this one looks a little bit more comfortable and it has long sleeves. Usually the court gown had only the sleeves that ended to your elbow. So in that way it's not completely historically accurate, and her hair is down, which is a definite no-no. But I think that is just to show her innocence and how childlike she was. And she was actually 14, so she was really young when she went to France, to border of France. So, as I discussed in the last video, at the border, Marie Antoinette was ordered to change her clothes to the French court gown and the French fashion. So she wouldn't bring anything from her homeland to her new country because she was going to be the queen of France. And this was a custom. So she wasn't the only princess to do this. So this is very accurate. And whole scene, I think that's really good because you can really see the outside and it's cold and you can feel her embarrassment and coldness and how weird it is, kind of. So in the scene when they are undressing her, you can see her stays. And those stays are, if you don't know the difference between the stays and the corset, it's not a corset. Go watch my previous video. Basically, stays were the predecessor of corset. So she's not wearing a corset, it stays. This is really important. This is like my biggest pet peeve, honestly. So she's wearing stays and they are patterned with flowers and they're cream colored. So they are showing that she's already very wealthy. Because why would you make your stays from an expensive fabric? Because no one can see those. Because it's underneath of your clothes. So that tells you that she's already quite wealthy. And they undress her and dress her again. The clothes are very similar, the underwear is very similar, nothing much changes. This is very interesting because her panniers, I just love those. Honestly, I don't know if that's historically accurate. I have never seen anything like that before. Like existing survived examples, there is none that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong, because it's like obviously I can't be able to see like everything from the era. So I'm always willing to be corrected because obviously no one can know everything and it's nice to always learn something new. So at the border she's dressed in this blue dress. This blue dress is very pretty. I'm probably gonna say this with every dress, that it's very pretty because they all are very pretty. And she wears this little blue hat, is it a cockade? Tricode? I'm gonna check that later and put the right word in. So the blue dress. It is the one that they dressed her at the border, and that is the one that she arrives to the French court. In real life, I think I remember that she visited somewhere between changing at the border and arriving to the court, so she would probably change her clothes. So I think that was the real. I think so. I'm just a little bit suspicious. And this dress is actually inspired by one of Marie Antoinette's portraits. You can see that they are very alike, and that's how the costume designer's name is Milena Canonero, by the way. And she was inspired by that portrait, and she has a little bow on her neck. And that is actually, it's representing that she's a gift from Austria to France. And it is again representing how she was seen like an object, basically. So she was a gift from Austria to France, and she has a little bow on her neck. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's not even like she's her own person. Oh my gosh. Misogyny. I hate it. I hate it. Oh, again, she has long sleeves, which is kind of not really the most accurate thing. The long sleeves came at the 1770s or 1780s, I think. So that's not the most accurate thing. The next dress that we see her in is her wedding gown. This is the interesting one. So I think the wedding gown looks a little bit too tight on her, like the costume. I think that is done on purpose. Because if you remember from my last video, Marie Antoinette's wedding gown was a little bit too small for her. There was some mistake when taking her measurements, and they made the wedding gown too small for her, which led to that that her underwear was showing underneath the gown. Like they couldn't close it properly, so it was showing. Which is kind of embarrassing when you're first time in a foreign country and you're getting married and everyone is basically seeing you for the first time, and then you have a gown that is too small. So her actual wedding gown, like the historical one, there is not really much pictures of her, there's no paintings of it, and it was made of cloth of silver, so it was very luxurious, and it was adorned with white diamonds that she got from her mother. And obviously this dress isn't like that, but it has very large panniers, which I think is a good thing, because in the most, like, the biggest court events, the larger the panniers would be. Like, the more formal event, the bigger the panniers were. So I think that's a good thing. So they got something right, something wrong. It's not really that big of a deal. Like, I think that the wedding dress that she wears is more like, it's more ivory. It has a little bit silver tone in it, but it's not completely what the description says about her wedding dress, the real wedding dress. Let's talk about the clothing ceremony that happens in the morning. As you can remember, I explained that in my last video. You can go check that one out. So we can see that in this film. And it's really amazing that we can see that happening in this film. And we can see how the clothes were really centered in her life in this film. I think 2006 Marie Antoinette is really celebrating the clothes and importance of the clothes in the court. I think it's really interesting how we can see how important the routines with the clothes were with the French court, and we can really understand that. And that is really, it's accurate, that scene. It's really accurate and I love it. It explains it in an easy way. Next, I want to talk about after she gets married, she wears a lot of pastels, a lot of pinks, a lot of like sweet candy colors. And so does her friend. She doesn't really stand out from the court. She's in like... It is really pretty though. All of those dresses are very pretty. But she isn't really standing out. But she was in a new place and she didn't really stand out, even though she was the Dauphin of France. And one of the scenes that we see that is really interesting is when she meets Madame du Barry. She meets her multiple times in the beginning of the film, but this particular scene is very interesting. Marie Antoinette is wearing this pink dress and she's walking with her friend who does have a mint color dress, so they're both wearing pastel. And then there's Madame du Barry in her red dress. And this is very interesting contrast because Madame du Barry is red. It's symbolizing of her passion and sex, and it's really, red is symbol, we think red as very sexual and yeah, very sexual color. So I think that contrast is very interesting. It's showing how Marie Antoinette was this sweet little innocent girl at the time, and Madame du Barry was this courtesan kind of, like, she was the mistress of the king. So obviously she is very much standing out. And there's actually movies about this, like the relationship of Marie Antoinette and du Barry. There is this old Hollywood film from 1930s, I think, called Madame du Barry. I haven't managed to find it anywhere yet, but the costumes looks amazing. And I'm really keen to see that one, because that is such an interesting dynamic in the court, because Marie Antoinette is supposed to be the most important woman in the court, and Madame du Barry is the king's mistress, so she has the most influence to the king, which is very interesting. But yeah, the color contrast is showing us, it is part of the costume plot. The costume plot is termed from Jane Gaines, and it is about, it tells us how costume tells us a story. It is basically how costume can be part of developing the story. So the next dress that I want to talk about is when she gets a letter from her mother. She still hasn't managed to get pregnant, and that is because obviously they weren't having sex. And she feels very depressed, and she feels that she's not really seen by anyone. And she's wearing this beautiful dress that is patterned. It's floral patterned, and I think that dress is quite accurate actually. And the wallpaper behind her has a floral pattern as well. It's not the same pattern, it's quite similar. It seems like she's almost fading to the wall because of her dress and because how she feels. She feels like she just wants to disappear. Because everyone has their eyes on her. She's the Dauphin. She's supposed to be pregnant now, and she's not getting pregnant, and everyone is blaming her. So she just wants to disappear, and this dress is telling us that, which I think is amazing. Amazing use of the costume when trying to enforce the plot of the film with the costume. Next, we're gonna talk about the Converse controversy, and I assume you all have seen this film as you're watching this one, because otherwise I don't know why would you be. But if you haven't noticed, there's this whole shopping montage in the film, and it's while I Want Candy is playing in the background. And there is this very brief scene, it's like few seconds, and you can see Lex wearing blue stockings and 18th century-esque shoes, and background you can see a pair of blue Converse. And that was done on purpose. Some people don't know that it was done on purpose, but it was. It was to symbolize the teenage girl that Marie Antoinette was at the time, and it is so the viewers, most are like teenagers, so the viewers can sympathize with her, and it is Sofia Coppola's way to show you that this film is about the teenager, and this is for the teenagers basically. So that was done on purpose. It's not a mistake, and it is a symbolic thing, and I think that's very clever. I used to love that part. Next, we're talking about the costume ball that she went, and it's a masquerade ball. So she's wearing a black tulle gown, which is still in the shape of the 18th century dress, but it's made of black tulle, and it's embroidered from the top, and it has black sheer sleeves that are elbow length. And it looks like the top part is ending to the shoulders, that it does cover the shoulders, which is very interesting because I was thinking at first that that is really inaccurate, but there are actually dresses that had like a little sleeve right on your shoulder, and then it would continue there would be another kind of underneath sleeve that would continue to your elbow. So that was actually fashionable, but it wasn't that. But the underneath sleeve definitely wasn't see-through. So this dress is probably the most inaccurate dress in the whole movie. And even this dress is stunning, I think. And now you can see she's wearing this huge hair, and she has this black mask which is, I think it looks like it's made of tulle or something. So the mask itself isn't accurate either. And the dress isn't accurate, but it's still stunning. And this is the ball that she meets Count von Fersen, the count that she has affair in the film. We don't actually know if they had an affair or not. They were close friends. That is something that we know, but there's no proof that they had or didn't have an affair. So I'm not gonna be saying if that's accurate or not. Obviously, they didn't have photographs or social media back then, so she basically could go to a ball in Paris and people wouldn't know. That is a possibility that could happen, because people wouldn't know exactly like she looked, because portraits isn't completely accurate to tell how a person looks, really. It really isn't, because the painters, the artists, they would make you look more like idealistic beauty of the era, especially if you're a queen. So we don't know how accurate her portraits are, how she looked, really. So the next very important dress is a coronation dress. Obviously she isn't crowned because she is the queen, but the King of France, the new King of France, Louis, he is crowned, and at his coronation she is wearing a huge tower of hair, very similar that we see at the ball scene. And actually the first recorded case that Marie Antoinette wore this hairstyle was Louis' coronation. So this is quite accurate. Obviously at the ball scene her hair shouldn't be that tall yet, because it wasn't a thing yet. Or it could have been, but the first recorded case was from the coronation. Her hair looks stunning, obviously. There's this little decorations on it. I think it looks amazing. And her dress is white. It has a lot of embroidery on it. Embroidery always makes your dress look more expensive, because embroidery, it takes a lot of time to make embroidery. And actually, Marie Antoinette loved embroidery. She was very good at it, because queens can have hobbies as well. And she's wearing diamonds, and this is very extravagant for this film, because I think most of the costume in this film are actually quite plain. Her costumes, they aren't like way over the top. The next costume that I really want to talk about is when she gets Le Petit Trianon. After she gets Le Petit Trianon, we see her in these white dresses. They're much more plain. They have ruffles in the neck area, and that is what we know as chemise à la reine. Not all of them are accurate to the chemise à la reine. Some of them are more structured, and I think that was a decision that the costume designer made, as I think that was more what looked better, like what was more in fashion in the early 2000s. So I think that was a decision that was influenced by the fashion of the 2000s. Obviously, if we would have a Marie Antoinette film made now, she would probably just wear chemise à la reine, because all of the cottagecore thing that is coming from the TikTok. I think that is something that was in fact influence of the fashion of the time. And she wears a lot of these white dresses. There's several of these, so you're gonna see pictures of some of them, not all of them. Some of them are more structured and some of them are less structured. None of them are exactly like the gown that she wears in the portrait, like in real life, and I think that's a shame. The earlier Marie Antoinette film that was filmed in the 30s. It's called Marie Antoinette as well. And in that one they actually made a remake of, like, the recreated the gown from the chemise and rain gown that Marie Antoinette wore to her portrait. And I think that's a missed opportunity. When she's wearing this, I think it's pink dress. Yeah, she's coming back to the court after just being in her own little world, Le Petit Trianon. She's wearing this flower crown and she has pink hair. Scandalous. So the pink hair, is that accurate or not? It actually is. It is accurate. Women did wear pink hair powder. Because Marie Antoinette was blonde, she could wear pink hair powder to make her hair look pink. And that is actually something that women of the 18th century did. So, it is accurate. Okay, after the pink dress, we see her having an affair with Count von Fersen, the Swedish count, and we see this one scene that I think is very amazing. She's wearing basically nothing, just stockings, but even her stockings, they are embroidered, and it is showing her wealth. Even though she's naked, we can still see that she's wealthy. She's wearing a fan in front of her private areas, and she's seducting Count von Fersen. This lack of underwear is showing her freedom. As we can remember, Marie Antoinette hated wearing stays and crown cords and all the restricting clothes. And here we can see that she's not wearing one because she's trying to seduce a man. She has found her freedom. She's the one initiating this. I think this is important. Even the lack of underwear can tell us something. It isn't always about that the underwear tells you something, but it's always also the lack of underwear that can tell you something different. Nakedness, sometimes, in this context, it is telling her own freedom. Next, I want to talk about a scene where an artist is painting a portrait of her and her children. And this dress and this portrait that she's painting is actually inspired by a real portrait that you can see here. And you can see that the dress isn't completely accurate. It isn't the copy of from the portrait. I'm a sucker from dresses that are copies from portraits, so kind of it could have been a copy from the portrait, completely the dress, and I think I would have liked it more that way, but that is just my personal opinion. Now I want to talk about the balcony scene. So at this point of the film, the French Revolution has basically started and there's a lot of uprisings, and Marie Antoinette went to the balcony in the middle of the night she's wearing her nightgown and she's wearing a rope with it, and she's bowing to the crowd. And this scene, she could have been dressed up completely. It could have been that way. She could have been done her hair and made to wear her everyday clothes and then go there and see the crowd. I think it's very important to see that she's in her nightgown and she's wearing a robe. So they're showing vulnerability, and she's showing that to the big crowd so that they can understand that she's vulnerable in this position. And I think that's a very interesting choice. And that, I don't know if that's something that happened. I haven't heard that it would be. The last dress that I want to talk about is when she sees her French to leave from Versailles. She decides to stay at the French court with her husband, Louis, and she is wearing this blue tone dress. And blue is color of calmness, so I think that is a good thing that she's wearing a blue, because she's being calm and she really doesn't know what's going to happen to her. But she's staying there and she's taking the responsibility, which is important to all of us, to remember to take responsibility of our actions. And she's staying behind, and I don't think this gown is very accurate to the era. So let's talk about the costumes overall. Were they accurate? Were they not accurate? I think the costumes in Marie Antoinette 2006 are quite accurate, actually. The shape is there, and that is the most important thing, that they have the right silhouette, and that is what they delivered. They also delivered a good costume plot. It is changing throughout the film, and that is great, and it is keeping up quite a bit with the historical events and how she dressed in Le Petit Trianon, for example. So I think that is really good. What I think was lacking from this film, costume-wise, there's no mention of her loving horse riding. There's no scene she wearing a riding outfit, hunting outfit, riding habit, none of that. Which I think is a really missed opportunity, because she did made a portrait of her wearing a riding habit, several of those, and in one of them she wore trousers, and I think that is something that I would have loved to see. But I think that probably didn't fit the narrative that they wanted to tell. I think that the narrative that Sofia Coppola wanted to tell was more about a girly girl and how we could relate to her. That would have brought a little bit more masculinity to her wardrobe. That is now lacking. And we kind of missed all of the scandals that went through with her clothing. We don't know anything about her hating wearing stays. In this film, we don't see any scandals about her dress, about the dress in Le Petit Trianon. We don't see scandals about that. We don't see scandals about her hair changing constantly. And yeah, we're lacking those bits. And I think those bits would have made this film even more interesting and even more driven by the plot. But I can understand you can't fit everything to a film, so that is completely understandable that they would cut those things off from the film. Overall, also, the color palette is very pastel. That isn't what necessary was fashionable. There were loads of different colors that weren't pastel, that was in fashion. But it was Sofia Coppola's choice. She gave a box of macarons to Milena Canonero and said, this is the color palette of the film. So it was a conscious choice to make the color palette of the film look like a box of macarons. And I think it's alright. I don't mind that it's very pastel. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, and it's very pretty, and I personally love it. I love this change. But yeah, not all Rococo dresses were in pastel colors. Definitely not. So don't think that. If you want to learn more about what Marie Antoinette wore, the real Marie Antoinette wore, watch my previous video. And tell me how you feel about the costumes in this film. Put it in the comments below. Comment what you think. Did you like this film? And what you think of the costumes. And if you have something about the accuracy that I missed in this, comment it below. I don't mind. Honestly, I don't mind being corrected. It's part of being human, being wrong. So And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so happy if you made it this far. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this or my previous video. If you enjoyed both of these, please subscribe. Give it a like. And maybe follow me on Instagram. It's Period Corset. You can see the link below, and yeah. Thank you for watching. Bye!